Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Technocratic Podcast. Today, our guest is Jill Oliveira. Jill is a good friend, Salesforce expert, and product leader. She currently runs her own consulting practice. Prior to that, Jill had run product and engineering teams across a number of different verticals, including health tech, renewables, management consulting, and even some fintech. I met Jill when she was running product for a health tech company that I was involved with, and I was really impressed by her depth of knowledge both of the domain and her broad understanding of the Salesforce platform. In fact, Jill is still my go-to person for whenever I need help on Salesforce, so I'll always call her up. She is truly awesome. Welcome to the podcast, Jill. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. What a great introduction. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks so much for joining. So as always, I'm going to turn it over to my trusty sidekick, Mishka McCallan. He'll dig into some fun, get to know you type questions to get us warmed up. Take it away, Mishka.
Hey, Jill. Nice to meet you. So the questions are this or that. So just pick one, whichever one you like. There is no wrong answer. Unless you choose differently from me, then it's definitely wrong.
Okay.
All right. So first one up is Christmas or New Year's?
Christmas.
Yeah, I got to go with Christmas too.
Gift. Yeah. All right. Next up, appetizer or dessert?
Oof. I gotta have both, but if I had to choose, it would be dessert.
Nice. I'll go with appetizer, Mishka. How about you?
I'll go with a appetizer with a side of dessert.
I like it.
Next up, Han Solo or Indiana Jones?
Indiana Jones.
Yeah, Indiana Jones. Classic.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. That one's hard for me. But I'll go Indy just so I stay with the cool kids. Next up, beaches or mountains?
Beaches.
Absolutely beaches.
I used to be beaches, but more mountains these days. It's cooler. It's less crowded. Okay, last one. Morning person or night owl?
Neither. Night owl, if I had to choose.
Yeah, both, exactly. Burning both ends of it. Yeah.
No, yeah. More of a morning person. So that ends this or that. See, that was easy. No problem, right?
Yeah, that was fun.
That was easy.
Okay.
I got one for you.
Okay.
Actually, this was a question that I heard. I don't know who online was talking, and they were asking this question about what's the best advice you've gotten as a product leader in your career?
Stay true to yourself when making decisions, and you're feeling pressure from a lot of different areas and a lot of aspects of the business, but you have to trust yourself and rely on yourself and your skills to make the best choices for the company and the stakeholders. Sometimes that's challenging because you want to please everyone, but you have to kind of stick with your knowledge and your experience to make those difficult choices.
Yep. I love that one. That's right up my alley.
Yeah.
Stick to what you believe in. Believe in what you say and stick to what you believe in. Absolutely. I think that's so good. I think the best piece of advice I got from somebody in product was somewhat similar. They said that no matter what happens, tell the truth. Like if things are going good, things are going bad, you're reporting to a board, you want to make them happy and stuff. Don't try to do that. Just be honest all the time. So I think I fully agree with you on that one. Speaking of product, Jill, you had a very interesting background. Of course, you've told me a lot about it over the years, and I just want to tell a little bit of it to our audience, kind of like you did some undergrad work and then you did what to get into product management? Like, how was your kind of origin story into product?
Yeah, it's actually really cool because, when I went to school, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do for work. So I went to school for business management. I chose that as my major because it was so broad. And my first job out of college was just an entry level, billing position. And I didn't know where I wanted to go, but I put everything I had into that job. And it was a lot of, analytics and, just basic administrative stuff. Just so happened that during my time at this company, they were the IT department was in the process of building a brand new billing system for us. So I was on the UAT team doing testing for this new product.
Yeah.
And I actually I enjoyed it. I was very detail oriented, so I was able to, document things, bugs, all of that. And the IT team kind of caught on to that, and they ended up recruiting me over as a business analyst. So that was for me just a pivotal moment in my career that I'll never forget,
Right.
because it brought me into the world of IT, and it exposed me to an area that I had never been exposed to before. So I started as a business analyst at the lowest level of the team, and my first assignment was to document and build a user manual for one of the projects we were working on. And then I just found my passion, right? And I worked my way up and ended up, becoming a project manager and managing my own projects. One of those projects happened to be implementing a CRM, and that's kind of how I got introduced to Salesforce platform.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So,
Really
15 years later, still working with the platform, and it's either pretty much project or product management, because so many companies use Salesforce as their overall product, both internally and externally. So, overseeing that entire platform, as a product is one of the roles that I've held, in addition to just Salesforce implementation, helping implement the platform.
That's really cool. I love the origin stories that people have, and yours is a really interesting one where you jumped from like the kind of the testing side over into product land.
Yep.
And it's like, so you were maybe 10% on engineering in the past?
Yeah,
You could say that. Bit of an engineer. Yeah, that's cool. I was asked this question too, like when you first got into product and you were a BA and then you were rising through the ranks, what was like the hardest thing about product management, for somebody who's coming new into it? What was like the challenging thing that you had to kind of like surmount or whatever?
I think just kind of understanding all of the different roles and within a project and related to the product. Also really kind of immersing yourself in the product and the goals, what are we doing? What is the plan? Really understanding the processes behind it. So it's like a lot of education going along with it, and then ramping up my more technical side, which I didn't have going into that. So I had, detail oriented, analytical, all of that, but I didn't have that technical knowledge. So getting exposed to some of these projects early on and even writing that manual kind of helped. And then taking some, SQL classes, learning how to, write some queries and understand integrations and database relationships and all of that. That certainly helped bridge the gap to be able to communicate, with the technical team. Whereas when I first got in there, I think that was one of the struggles.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's a huge struggle for a lot of junior product people, and stuff that I hear all the time is that communication with engineering and speaking their language and all that. Back in those earlier days, what was it like being on the Salesforce platform and building? Were you building stuff on Salesforce? Could you build stuff at that time on Salesforce, or was it more of a CRM?
So it was just the Salesforce was so different. It's just crazy how it's transformed in the last 15 years. But what I took to it initially was it's kind of like a blank slate, right? It's this platform, and I had no idea that you can actually go in there and do like coding, but without the code. You can customize the platform right off the bat, adding fields, customizing layouts, all of that stuff, without being a developer. And I was so excited by that. And I was like, I want to take this part on. We hired a partner to help us implement, but I said, I want to do everything I can, like hands-on, and learn about this platform. And anything that's over my head technical, we'll use this partner for. And I was amazed at how much you can do, and to this day, without being an engineer or a developer.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess in that sense, Salesforce is like the world's most popular low code, no code like
I
platform
think
out
it
there,
is.
right?
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you know how to use it right and you invest and you can invest in it because it's not cheap,
No,
but
it's
but
not.
if you but if you can afford it, it's a great platform. Okay, so so did you start getting into Salesforce right at the beginning of your product management journey, or was it after a little while?
It was after a little while. So I had managed some projects, products, at that company that I was with. One related to a field service software that we were implementing, kind of overseeing that product for a while. But it was with that company that long ago that, that project came about, that Salesforce project. And that's kind of when I got introduced to the platform. And, shortly
Okay.
after that, because I took such a liking to it, I went and got certified, my admin certification, because I knew I kind of wanted
Yeah.
to stick with this product and kind of really learn more about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And actually, even product itself has grown up. Product management as a discipline
Yeah.
has changed so much over the years. In the early stages of your career, did you have sort of mentors that you leaned on, or people sort of like more senior to you, or was it more like you were just figuring it all out on your own?
No, I've had so many mentors in my career, and I honestly, I couldn't have done it without them. And I'm so grateful for them and their guidance because, first and foremost, my boss when I was just getting into IT, the person who came to me and recruited me and completely changed my
Yeah.
life and my career trajectory and where I was going. I'll never forget that because if it wasn't for her kind of seeing that potential in me and, offering me this role, who knows, I don't know where I would have, ended up. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and even coming over to IT and product, and she was always there to kind of help me, to guide me as I was kind of
Hmm.
growing and learning these new positions and roles and what they included, always
Right.
there to lend an ear. And then throughout
Right.
my career, I've been very fortunate to establish some really great genuine relationships with people that were superior to me or above me that were willing to take the time to guide and mentor. You are one of them. You helped me a lot at one of my roles, when I was new to product management and, building a roadmap. And that was something new for me. And you were there.
Well, I learned a lot from you too, Joe. I learned a lot from you too, believe me. A lot of Salesforce knowledge that you taught me. Um, how when you got into management, when you stopped being an individual contributor and you started becoming a manager of people and started hiring, what was that like for you? Because I know for me it was incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Um, it was not an easy transition. I'm probably much older than you, so this was way back in the day. But the hardest thing for me was like trying to understand that everybody comes from like a different context of knowledge and that they're bringing different perspectives. As an engineer running an engineering team, I was like, oh, well, everybody's a developer here. Just start developing,
Yeah.
but everybody
Yeah.
had opinions and thoughts and ideas. So that was my big challenge. I'm curious, like, what was your big challenge getting into management?
I was nervous. I was nervous and,
Hmm.
am I going to be a good leader? I had never, been in charge of a team and hiring and building a team and, making that team cohesive and being able to work together and make progress together. So that was a challenge I was really excited to take on, but I was nervous. Am I going to be good at this? Am I going to be tough enough? Am
Hmm.
I, going to be empathetic enough? Am I,
Yeah.
so, I tend to be, I don't know, sometimes too easy, where sometimes I need to, push back a little bit. And am I going to be able to do that in those situations if someone isn't performing and all of that? And honestly,
Yeah.
it was such a great experience. And, there were certainly ups and downs and challenges, but I
Mm.
was able to, look at resumes and speak with people and build a
Mm.
team, albeit small team. I feel like it was a mighty team, and we were able to really accomplish quite a bit on the product and the platform in a pretty short amount of time. And one of the biggest challenges, I think, is a lot of what you were saying is understanding what each person brings to the table. We all have strengths and we all have weaknesses, and just kind of getting to know that resource and kind of pulling from their strengths and then guiding them in that direction, assigning them, tasks related to their strengths. And so, yeah, I think
you're good at that.
I don't know.
I think you're good at that.
Thank you.
It's interesting because a lot of people who get into product management, they think it's one thing and that turns out to be another. And one of those, one thing versus another for me was, I don't know if this is true for you, but was the amount of communication and collaboration you need to have to be in product, to be effective in product.
Yeah.
Like I would see you talking to the whole team, to your peers, to the other executives and stuff. And, you have to be a pretty dang good communicator to pull off being a product leader, I think.
So true. Yeah, that is such a good point, because it's continuous and constant communication with those different groups of people, right? So your team, you're in touch with them, and you want to give them that freedom, but that communication and kind of knowing where things are and knowing where we stand and are we on track, and are we meeting our deliverables, and then being able to also communicate with the internal teams and stakeholders.
Oh my God.
The product, right? And everybody wants something and needs something, and it's an emergency. And then, then you've got the leadership team where you got to make sure you can clearly and concisely tell them, like, this is where we're at and this is where we're going to be. And so, it's a lot of communication for sure.
It's a lot of communication for sure.
So we had one of our previous guests, Hugo Borda, had a quote where I want to get your reaction to it. He said one of his keys to success as a CTO who's been in the business like 30 years is that it's more important to manage across than it is down. So manage with your stakeholders, manage with your peers. If you do that well, you're more successful than if you just manage down. What is your reaction to that?
Yeah, I like that. I like that quote. I think that's very true. If you're collaborating with, across the way, and you're in communication and, everything kind of trickles down. And I think it's important to, manage those, that report to you as well. But I think, just collaborating across the board, is super important.
You became a project manager and then you got into being an executive. If you had to, looking back, what was the one thing that you would change for either of those transitions, where you look back and you say, oh man, I wish I had done something different instead?
I think with hiring and bringing people on, one of the things that I would have changed was being more thorough and being more selective in that process. I think I was feeling this sense of urgency to build this team. And in hindsight, I wish I had taken a little more time. And, I think we ended up with a good team, but at the same time, I think I would have, if I had to change anything, it would be spending more time on that process.
Yeah. That's like the regret of every executive, Jill. So don't feel bad. Like every executive I talk to is like, I wish I'd taken longer to hire.
You need these people, right? You need them. And the whole, that process is very daunting and time consuming. And,
it is. And it's like, you want the person to fit,
yes.
You're looking at their resume, you listen to their interview and you're like, this could work. You're finding ways because you've got this enormous pressure to deliver all this roadmap.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And before we transition over to more of the details around like Salesforce and what you think about the platform now and all of that, I wanted to ask you one more question about just your career and your experiences. When you look back on it, what's a big success for you that you feel like you can look back and say, you know what, this was an amazing experience. I would do that again. We achieved our goals. Is there anything like that that you can kind of talk to the audience about?
Yeah, and I do really feel like that role, the executive level role that I held and what we accomplished there, in that healthcare space and what we were able to do with the
Yeah.
product. I feel like in that time, a small team, we really transformed the product.
Yeah.
We upgraded the user interface completely and, changed the experience, and we got such great positive feedback, and we were able to stick to a timeline
Yeah.
and a budget. And that was
Yeah.
really one of my first experiences as a leader. So that is definitely something that I look back on. And, even though now I'm kind of back into like the freelance world and independent, it is something that I would definitely be interested in getting back into eventually because I
Yeah.
thoroughly enjoyed it.
You guys were awesome.
And
Yeah.
we were truly a team. It almost felt like a family. We were, worked really
Right.
hard. We were all committed, and there's something really gratifying about that,
Yeah. You all had a very special culture and team, and you took it from 0 to 1. I mean,
Yeah,
it was very simple when you joined, and you turned it into this actual platform, which was pretty awesome
yeah.
to see that. So that was really cool. Speaking of platform, I'm going to ask you several controversial Salesforce questions. Um, let's start with an interesting one around AI. Um, is all the investment Salesforce is doing in AI,
hmm
do you feel like that's more hype, or that's like a real thing that's going to benefit the Salesforce customers out there?
I mean, I think, yeah, I think it will benefit them. Ultimately, what it comes down to, it is some hype. Obviously, they've been investing in AI for quite a while now because
It's been a while,
I
yeah.
went to
Yeah.
Dreamforce 3 years ago, I think it was, and it was,
Mm.
a big thing there. But it just continues to grow, and for good reason. I think there's a lot of benefits to it. There's also risks to it. The
Yep.
key from my perspective is the data that this, process is running on, and whether it's reliable
Right.
data. So if you have a platform and you have a really strong, good quality database, it's like, it can do so much as far as predictive and, generative
Right.
stuff. At the same time, it can be dangerous, right? Like you have to,
Mm.
certain industries, healthcare, for
Healthcare.
example, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first one that
Hmm.
comes to mind, like finance, all of these things.
Yep.
When that data is so critical, you
Hmm.
can't, you can't risk getting it wrong,
Right. So yeah, I think I agree with you. Like there's a risk reward situation happening with using AI and Salesforce. One thing that like I'm really curious about what you think about it is the user experience, like the UI UX of Salesforce. Is that something that you view as like, okay, this is everything is going to change into chatbot? Every click is going to switch over to writing a sentence, or is it going to be some hybrid thing? What do you think
I
about
think it's
that?
going to be hybrid, and I hope it
Mm.
doesn't completely switch over to the chat.
Oh God, no.
Because, I mean,
Yeah.
that's not a good user experience, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the chatbot it's like, because of OpenAI taking the world by storm, of course, it's like the most popular product release in the history of the internet or
Yeah,
something. But then that interface, a lot of people I don't think are going to love using that interface for every little thing.
yeah,
So probably going to merge, I think, in some way and, kind of come up with something hybrid
I think so too.
for
I
Salesforce.
do, yeah,
Yeah.
because their interface is, since they kind of transitioned to that Lightning interface years ago, um,
Hmm.
it's very user friendly, and now with the flows
Yeah.
that they do, they call them screen flows. Everything just
Hmm.
kind of is very easy to navigate through, and it also renders very well on mobile, any type of mobile
Hmm.
device. So I think a
Yeah.
combination will probably be the way that it goes.
Yeah. Do you think Salesforce has a good AI roadmap that, like, if you were head of product for Salesforce, is that what you would draw up, the steps they've taken? Or do you want something different, something else from them that they're not giving the market?
No, I think they do. I mean, they always have a pretty strong roadmap related to, new and innovative products out there. And when it comes to AI,
Yeah.
because it's so big, I know that that's going to be a big part of their their focus. I haven't seen the most recent. If I was at Dreamforce right now, I would know more because I guarantee you that's all night. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that they're going to have a pretty strong roadmap related to AI.
Speaking of Dreamforce, okay, this is a question I've been dying to ask you, which is, as CTO throughout my career, anytime I have a Salesforce team, everybody on the Salesforce team wants to go to Dreamforce.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have the budget for it, sometimes you don't.
It's expensive.
It can be expensive. When Salesforce developers or Salesforce admins and the different roles, when they can't go to Dreamforce, what do you lose out on when you're not going to Dreamforce? Like, what are the benefits of going to Dreamforce?
Yeah, I mean, you lose out on the overall experience, the big, massive experience, right? Which is motivating and captivating, and you leave there and you feel inspired, right? And you're ready to go. You want to do the next thing. In addition, there's so many different breakout sessions you can go to. So in this one small time period, there's a lot that you can learn by going to these different sessions if you take advantage of it. You know, some people want to go there for the experience of just hanging out and partying and going to the happy hours and all that. And that's fun, but you can, in a short amount of time while you're there, you can get certified. You can, there's hands-on learning experiences that you can do. There's a lot of different breakout sessions. For me, I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. I would not spend the money to go every year, because it is a big investment. But I think it's absolutely, if you have if you have a Salesforce platform and you have a team, definitely sending, 1 or 2 resources each year, I think is a good idea.
It's valuable if you make it valuable. That's one thing. Maybe it's a 2 or 3 year cadence to it. That's another. I remember asking some of my staff to make a plan for what they'll do when they were there, which annoyed them to no end, but they did it. I think they were better off for it, because it can turn into a little bit too much of a party. But it's good, as a retention tool, in certain circumstances, right? People look forward to it. If they're doing a good job, that could be a sort of a reward type thing, because there's a lot of innovation that gets kind of like unveiled at Dreamforce or whatever. And then you come back and you start working on those things, and that can be helpful. One thing about the impact of AI, we were talking earlier about like Salesforce being like the original low code, no code platform. And now AI is coming into play in the world. And I talked to all of these developers and they're like, forget low code, no code platforms. We have AI now. That's the ultimate low code, no code. What do you think will be the impact of people who are developing software on Salesforce right now, can now switch over to using AI to develop just as fast as they would with Salesforce? What is that is that like a threat to Salesforce AI? Or what do you think about that aspect of it?
Potentially, I think right now, kind of the accuracy of what comes out of AI isn't there yet, right? So to me, it's still risky to use AI over, without validation, without testing, without all of that stuff. It's still very risky. I think over time, it's going to continue to progress and probably be more and more accurate, and will probably be able to replace a lot of that stuff and, write that code. So yeah, I'm kind of curious to see what happens, what transpires over the next few years,
oh my God.
because it's kind of a big unknown on where
this feels like the early days of the internet, basically.
Exactly.
A little bit, which only me and Mishka types understand. But switching over a little bit, Jill, to some of the sort of more executive level sort of questions around, like, so we get in, all of us had some pathway to get into the executive ranks. And once we made it there, we sort of had different experiences to try to like succeed in that. For you, what was the key to your success in the executive ranks? Was it like, oh, well, I just communicate really well with everyone and I'm a great communicator? Or was it your skill at Salesforce? Or was it some other thing that you would say, like one or two things that really made you succeed when you were at that ELT level?
Yeah, I think what really helped me was learning to trust the people on my team and to let them do their thing and not be so involved and be a leader. So, that was different for me. That was something I had to learn how to do, was be more hands off and to trust the people
Yeah.
that I had on my team to do their jobs. So I think in doing that, it really did help because they felt that autonomy. They felt that, they had my trust to do their jobs. And I had to just be, more hands off and more at the leadership level. And so I think that was definitely something that helped for sure, transition
Yeah.
into that leadership role. It's
Yeah.
tricky. It's hard because
It's hard.
yeah. I kind of want to know what's going on at all times and make sure everything's good.
Exactly.
That sense of control, letting go is
Yeah.
hard. But
Yeah.
I think when you're communicating regularly, you do have a pulse on how things are going, right? Then you
Exactly.
feel more
Yeah.
comfortable backing up
Right.
a little bit.
Well, what I think is absolutely right about what you're saying is that you have to become a delegator,
Yes.
a good delegator to be a good executive, because you need kind of the folks around you to be executing on some things so that you can execute on the executive part of your job
Right.
function. And it's like, I think that executive piece of it is truly a skill that needs to be developed just like anything else.
Yep.
And if you're busy in the weeds, you're not going to develop that skill. So
Exactly.
you have to have that. I think for me, it was the sort of like key thing that helped me succeed at the executive level was being aggressive with my opinions, and and openly talking about them and not being shy about sharing them, even though I knew that a lot of them would get shot down, but you got to shoot your shot when you're
Yeah.
at that executive level, in my opinion. I saw some statistic the other day where the famous tennis player Roger Federer said something about like he lost, like in his entire career, he lost like 55% of all of his shots. He lost the point. And he's like, so you're going to miss a lot,
Yeah.
but you have to try to hit it. And I think that's what really made a difference for me, is just like constantly trying. Because the minute you become quiet and don't say your opinion, why are you in the executive room anyway?
Right.
At that point?
Yes.
Then
Exactly.
might as well be somebody else or
Yeah.
whatever. One other thing I wanted to ask about this sort of executive, once you reach the executive level, is what's the difference between making decisions at the executive level, in your opinion, versus when you're like an individual contributor or a lower level manager? Like for you, what was the big difference in how you made decisions?
Well, the decisions were just based on, the overall company at that point, right? And the goals for the company and the strategies for the company. So you're making much broader, decisions that have much bigger impact.
Right.
So, obviously you have to really be diligent and really think through these types of decisions. And, everything that falls underneath that rolls up to these decisions that you're making. So, for me, it was just kind of a different thought process because it wasn't so granular anymore. It was more, a broader scale and thinking bigger, thinking for the future, thinking more strategically instead of just tactically, just, what do we have to do right now? It's just a bigger way of thinking, I think, at that level.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to factor in so many more data points,
Yes.
right? It's not just like your silo or whatever. You have to think through the whole business and what can happen, all the implications and all that. That's a huge difference when you get to be an executive. Do you feel like going into the next phase of your career, do you feel like consulting is more exciting and fun to you? We sometimes used to talk about this. like I love consulting, but I also love the full-time
Me
thing.
too.
Like, where do you fall? Yeah, it's hard to
It's such
figure
a
out.
toss up because there's pros
Yeah.
and cons to both.
Hmm.
When you're full time executive, it's just a lot. It's more grueling. It's more demanding. It's more responsibility. But
Yeah.
you're also part of a team, right? And you have the ability to make a broader impact. I feel and leading a team and being successful at it to me is extremely gratifying. And
Yeah.
just being part of a company and a culture is also very gratifying if it's the right
Yeah.
culture. But
Yeah. Exactly.
being a consultant at the same time has its pros too. And you get to kind of choose who you're working with every day.
Exactly.
You get
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
additional flexibility. The level of responsibility is still there, but it's different. You're not sitting
Yeah.
in board meetings. You're not putting together slide decks and budgets and all of
Hmm.
that. So pros
Hmm.
and cons to
Yeah.
both, and that's why
Yeah.
when I think about the future and kind of I'm always torn. Which way do I go? But
Hmm.
I miss leading. I have to say I do.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun building and leading teams and
Hmm.
creating the right culture, which, like we were talking about earlier, we don't need to name the companies and stuff, but you had a great culture.
Yep.
Um, what's the secret to that, in your opinion? How do you get a great culture going? How do you even define that personally, the way you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is by finding ways to have fun and lighten the situation because work is stressful and everybody's lives are stressful and we're all going through
Yeah,
stuff. And so to be able
that's so
to
true.
just have some, get-togethers, whether it's on site at the company where it's all right, guys, we brought in lunch today. Come down and enjoy some pizza, or it's Mexican Day, or take them out
Yeah,
for at the holidays. Go do a group team outing together. Those type of things
right.
are mean so much to people that, and you don't even realize the impact it has on overall morale.
Right.
And it
It has
doesn't
a
have to
huge
cost a
impact.
lot. It doesn't have to be crazy expensive. It's just the
Right.
time away and the time to just say, all right, let's take a break. Let's go just do something fun and we'll come back to
Exactly.
this.
Exactly. Somebody early in my career accused me of not celebrating enough.
Yeah.
They were like, Bobby, we hit the goals and then we just like on to the next one.
Yeah.
And so this has
No.
been a huge learning for me. Is like you gotta stop a little bit, just like you're saying, and have a little celebration, have a little fun, and then move to the next thing. It makes a huge impact.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you think there are other aspects to culture that, like, specifically around product teams where, like product teams, like we were talking about earlier, usually like the hub of the organization in typical B2B SaaS companies, products like kind of connected to sales, marketing, engineering, support, everything. Is there something unique or special you have to do with product teams to get a good culture for them, or is it more of the same?
I mean, I think it's a lot of the same, and that is true. I mean, technically, when it's the IT teams are always so all of the other departments are dependent on the tech teams. So I think
Yeah,
fostering a good culture in that core group just carries over as well to the others, and even involving
yeah,
them in the things that you do as a team too. So because a lot of times you're with this small group all the time and you don't really get a chance to get to know some of the other people that are in other departments and things like that. So I think it's nice to cross over and do company wide. Obviously, it depends how big the company is. Sometimes that can
yeah,
be challenging, but I
yeah,
think company wide events and activities and team building things are good because it's good to get
yeah.
that crossover in departments and get to know others that you don't work with on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's really good. I noticed product teams that have really good cultures were good at taking a step back from their day-to-day execution of building the product and look at what kind of impact they were having on like the customer base. And
Hmm.
I mean, most product people, they're building products, which they are builders for sure, but they want to do it for a reason. They're doing it for
Yeah.
some,
Right. Right.
customer oriented reason. And it seemed like the good product teams always kind of take a step back and are like, all right, here's all of our customers. Did we create value for them?
Right.
How did we create that value? Are we just churning out features because we had to churn them out? Are we really making a problem get solved for a
Mm-hmm.
customer? And when they do those, steps back for a second and maybe talk to customers and stuff, it seems to definitely help the mindset a lot more. Like reminds you why you're doing this whole thing,
Exactly. It's so
at least in
rewarding.
my opinion.
Absolutely. To
Yeah.
actually see the impact that you've had and, even, and that's why sometimes it's hard to quantify. It's hard to know,
Yeah.
but to hear positive feedback, get those, customer feedback, positive feedback from customers is, to me, it's huge. And that's why
Massive.
that's part of the culture too, is what we would do is when we would get that, we would read it at our company meetings, to the whole company and read that feedback. So the whole company could hear, like, this is how your work impacts our customers,
Yeah. That's really good that you read them out loud to the whole company. That's awesome. That reminds me of a friend of mine who would do something called customer support days, where he would send all the engineers over to customer support. This is when everybody was in the office. And he was like, you have to do customer support for one whole day. And the engineers would come back with their minds blown. They would be like, holy crap, we had no idea what was happening with our product.
Yeah.
But I think the same holds true for product teams as well. Being connected to the customer on a frequent basis is super important. I got a couple of difficult questions for you. One is, what do you do in the scenario where you're head of product, you're like the VP of product or the chief product officer, you've got the whole rest of the business that maybe isn't necessarily like conversant with product management and how product management works and the processes involved in it and stuff. Maybe it's a services company or a tech-enabled service company and not like a software company exactly. How do you teach the rest of the company what product is all about in that scenario?
Yeah, again, communication, right? So it's really kind of talking them through the process of how it works, because all you get all the time are requests, right? When you're in product, right? We need this sucks, this needs to change.
Right.
Like, can you fix this? So they don't want to hear, yeah, I'll put it on a list, So you have to explain to them and help them understand, we have a plan for the product, and I understand that this is a high priority for you, and I'm going to make sure that we get it in our plan. Please be patient with us, because, we have all of these other, high priority items as well. But you need to let them know that you hear them and that their request is important to you, but at the same time, educate them about how this process works and that it's not as simple. It's not as simple as just flipping a switch. They think it's that easy, but you have to kind of explain what it really means, and there's to do it in the test environment, and then we have to test, and then we have to deploy, and there's steps to it. It's not just that simple. I think once you explain that it's kind of like a process, it's not as simple as just flipping a switch, they tend to understand a little
They start to understand better. Would you ever do something formal like a product workshop inside the company? Like, this is how we work, and this is
I didn't, but I would, and I think that's a great idea. I do.
I think it seems to help for sure, because it's like you can tell somebody what the job of product is one time, but they have their own problems, so there's like, you got to repeat it over and over again. And then I feel like it takes like 18 months for a company that's never had product before to get product. It's like, and then that too, they have to have somebody like you who's educating them constantly and who has the patience to educate. You're almost like a teacher.
Right. And that's why I think a workshop is a great idea, because it's a way to kind of expose them to what it is, what's involved, and that's great.
Exactly. The other difficult question I was going to ask you is, what happens when the product strategy and the business strategy and goals don't match up. Me and you would sometimes have these discussions about how do you align these things, product saying, hey, well, the product strategy should be this. We should go after these customers in this way. And the business maybe has been running a certain way for a long time and they have their own thinking and they've never done product before. And you're trying to match up the strategies.
Yeah.
That is incredibly difficult too, right?
It is. It is incredibly difficult. And, in addition, changing directions from the business perspective, they have one plan and then all of a sudden they're pivoting to something else and, it has a major impact on the product. And so, it's kind of, it's like, okay, we have to go back to the drawing board, back to the roadmap, and how are we going to kind of translate these changes into the roadmap? Does it make sense? Are we following best practices? So it's assessing this whole situation, which I feel like is continuously happening at companies all the time.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So it's just this kind of day to day. All right. What are the fires? What are the priorities? How do we,
Yeah. I feel like business pivots are constant in a lot of companies, like you're saying. And my take on it, Jill, is that like product has to mostly align to what the business goals and objectives are, obviously. But that like sometimes if you're clever enough, you can kind of like slip in an item or two, and like sort of like, and then you're like chipping away at the concept of product being integrated into thinking of the business. And you get a few wins under your belt, and then the rest of the business can see, oh, well, there was a business case for this product thing. They told us what the business case was. They executed on it, and they got the return on investment. And then they're like, all right, let's do more product.
Yes, then. Right.
I think the mistake that junior leaders make is trying to force the business to adapt a product,
Right.
And just saying, no, this is going to work. Well, you have to show some proof, even if it's the smallest amount of proof. The CEOs and the CFOs out there, they're not going to say no to growth coming from product usually. But you got to prove it out. And that's difficult because sometimes you got to do like a skunk works under the radar thing.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. Yep. When you get to a certain level, so like they say product management is all about trade-offs, making trade-offs and stuff. In one way, I think of that as like taking calculated risks, What kind of risks should VPs of product be taking, in your opinion?
I mean, I think if they're well-educated risks, so you've done your research, you've done your due diligence, and you feel like this is something that's going to have a positive impact and a positive return, and maybe you don't have 100% buy-in, but you feel very confident and you trust your, knowledge and experience. I think those are the types of risks that are worth taking. If I don't think it's worth taking risks just on a whim, but if you're really feeling passionate about something and you're feeling like it really has the potential to make a big, impact on the company, and you've done your research, then I think you got to go for it.
Absolutely. Yep. So the kind of risk people should take are calculated risks, is what you're saying. Evidence-based risks. Yes. Absolutely. I would also add to that this notion that I think VPs of product in general are too conservative, in my opinion. And I think that they should trust their instincts more and take risks where the upside can be like pretty significant. Like I've seen situations where like, there's a VP of product, they have like 2 or 3, innovative ideas, but they're scared of failing. And I think people should be less scared of failing. I think they should take more risks, generally speaking. And as you said, calculated risks to some degree. And also there's like this like certain point you get where you can keep spinning around making business cases. You just got to like take the leap.
Yeah.
Right. And I find like those kinds of VPs of product who take the leap tend to be like, I worked with this one person she was super charismatic. They tend to be like charismatic. They can
Mm-hmm.
convince the leadership team.
Yeah.
They can be like, this is going to be great. They don't have a ton of evidence necessarily,
Right.
but
They have the
they're willing to
confidence.
like, they have the confidence and
Yeah.
they have a gut instinct. Like
Yes.
they're like, this product's going to work,
Right.
you know?
Yep.
And I think more product people should be like that. I think product people seem like a lot of them are conservative when they could be more risk takers. Okay, last question. It's going to be about Salesforce again. Um, when Salesforce does massive updates,
Mm-hmm.
massive changes, it's a ripple effect gets created for companies. How should when companies are thinking about, well, let's build on the Salesforce platform, or, we've been doing Salesforce for a while, let's do even more on it and stuff. But then somebody like a CTO type person or a head of product comes in and is like, now, wait a second, Salesforce might change, their pricing might go up,
Yeah.
like they're moving to Lightning, the next version of Lightning, or whatever. Like the changes in the platform, that dependency that companies have to have on Salesforce, like how should they handle the changes and not get negatively impacted by it?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that has kept me with the platform for so long and why I'm really passionate about it is because they don't make any major changes without giving their customers a ton of notice, like a year's worth of notice.
Yeah,
If they're phasing
at
something
least,
out,
yeah.
they will give you a huge notice. When Lightning, the new user experience interface was coming, they announced it years in advance. There's still customers that are on the old classic version. They
Really?
haven't taken it
Okay.
away yet. So they do
Okay.
quarterly or 3 upgrades per year. They're so
Yeah.
seamless. You log in, they give you previews, you know what's coming, you get to see
Yeah.
all the new features that are coming. You can take classes on them. You can be fully up to speed when that new release comes out. And the release just gives you more features. It's not taking anything away. Very rarely do they take anything away unless it's to replace it with
Right.
something better, bigger and better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
the
exactly.
cost, that is
Yeah, they're really good at
obviously,
doing that.
that's something when you're invested in Salesforce and you have your kind of business and solution built on that platform,
All
it
right.
is tough, right? Because the price does go up. And I know from when I started with it to now, it's gone up exponentially. But I definitely see the value in the platform for sure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you can justify it's a great platform,
Yeah.
if you can compare it to what a dev team would be required to build the same stuff
Mm-hmm.
and the time to market and all the other benefits, then you can build a business case around maybe using Salesforce. But yeah, you have to track like year over year expenses, and then you get locked in. And so that's always a factor that
Yeah.
companies should think about. Okay, Jill, I think we're at the end of our time. It was a pleasure talking with you today. It was really great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Bobby. Great speaking with you too.
I always learn so much talking with you, and I'm sure our listeners will have taken a lot from this discussion. Mishka, I want to thank you as well. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. I'll see you next time on the Technocratic Podcast. In the meantime, keep the shark swimming.
Mm-hmm.